Welcome to Meet the Press Now. I'm Kristen Welker in Washington, where we are continuing to follow that breaking news out of the Middle East, where Hamas says it has agreed to release all Israeli hostages, both alive and dead, and that it will commit to relinquish its control of the Gaza Strip, a significant development. The agreement is in response to President Trump's proposal to end the Israel-Hamas war, which he outlined earlier this week. The president also warned earlier today that Hamas had to agree to his proposal by Sunday, threatening, quote, "All hell like no one has ever seen before will break out against Hamas." In its statement, Hamas said it will accept some elements of Mr. Trump's plan, but other parts need more negotiations. NBC's Monica Alba is at the White House. Also in a moment, we'll be joined with Ambassador Dennis Ross, former Mideast Envoy and an NBC News foreign affairs analyst, and NBC's Richard Engel, who is in Jerusalem. Monica, let me turn to you first. This is a significant development. Several days ago, President Trump had signaled that this might be the case, that he was getting closer to a deal. And now we have this very big piece of news coming out of the Middle East. Monica, what do you make of it, and how did it come about?
Certainly significant, Kristen, if this does end up leading to what certainly President Trump hopes it ends up leading to. And I was just talking to senior White House officials here who were aware of this statement but didn't necessarily have a response for us. Yes, I think because of how lengthy it was in nature and as complex as it is with all of these different elements, some of which it does seem Hamas says they are on board with and agreeing to, and others of which they have not completely endorsed. And it is very important to point out that in this, Hamas is saying they're willing to negotiate potentially on some of the key sticking points, but again, not necessarily fully back the 20-point peace plan that President Trump and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu had both endorsed earlier this week, just on Monday, when the Israeli Prime Minister was here after he was in New York at the United Nations General Assembly. And there had been a lot of discussion, Kristen, as you know, about how they were going to land on this potential peace plan. And then once it was endorsed by many Arab leaders who had also met with President Trump in the last 2 weeks, there was a sense of optimism from this White House about the direction this could go in. And the fact that Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu came here to the Oval Office just behind me and called the leader of Qatar and apologized for the death of a person there when Israel struck Doha in trying to take out, they said, senior Hamas military leaders. The fact that you had that apology, that expression of regret, was really key, according to the White House, in trying to advance the possibility of a discussion for a ceasefire and ultimately for an end to the war in Gaza. But I can also tell you, Kristen, that with all of that context and all of that background and the idea that the president was going to give Hamas 3 or 4 days, he ultimately moved that deadline to Sunday, as you noted, at 6 p.m. And the fact that Hamas has now responded, but it's not a complete acceptance, well, now obviously that leaves some room for discussion. And I'm told that Secretary of State Marco Rubio was here at the White House. It seems potentially for other reasons and for other meetings. He's also, of course, the National Security Advisor, and in that capacity has an office here in the West Wing. So he's here quite frequently, but I'm told he is here. Bet he will likely be in some meetings, either briefing the president or discussing this and a response from the White House that they are working on right now. But given the fact that the president has said for weeks now that his priority is to get the hostages that are still alive to be released, the fact that Hamas has said they will likely do that, again, conditional on some of these other really key sticking points, is something probably that the White House will be happy to see, will embrace. But it's some of those other plans that are, of course, very important as well in terms of who will govern Gaza after the war, what is the role of the Palestinian Authority. But we should also note, Kristen, that we're coming up on the 2-year anniversary of the war, and certainly this is something the president has had as something he wanted to be able to say that he was a key mediator in, a key person that can be involved in this, as he has talked about his role in other conflicts. But this was certainly one he's been working on for a lot of time and spending a lot of energy in trying to get this over the finish line. And so I think you can expect the White House to be pleased with a little bit of progress. But as we know with this situation, it's the complexity and many, many things that are still outstanding that have to get resolved before we can declare that there will be an actual end to this 2-year brutal war in Gaza.
Yeah, Monica, you lay out the complexity very well, and I think touch on one of the key points, which is what will happen to Gaza if and when this war does come to an end. Monica, please stand by for me. I do want to go to Richard Engel, who is in the region for us. Richard, I've been watching your reporting, your reaction to this. Bring us the very latest that you are hearing, both from that statement that we have now from Hamas, and also you are zeroing in on what it says and what it doesn't say, right?
Absolutely. So what this statement, which we've received directly from both Hamas and from a senior Arab negotiator, makes it quite clear that Hamas is willing and will hand over all of its hostages, all of the 48 remaining hostages, 20 of whom are believed to be still alive. Exactly when that will take place depends, according to Hamas, on field circumstances, but it said that the next 72 hours is unrealistic. But Hamas is committing to free all of the hostages and hand over all of the remains. That was perhaps the key demand of both Israel and the White House. The other key demand is that Hamas leave power, relinquish authority, no longer have a role in the governance of Gaza. Hamas has also said it accepts that it accepts a new, quote, technocratic government, a body of independents who will rule the Gaza Strip. All of the other points regarding disarmament, the tunnels, what happens to the occupation of Gaza. Will there be an international force there? Will there be an international force of Muslim countries, of Arab countries? Will there be a buffer zone controlled by Israel around the perimeter? Hamas says all that will be subject to negotiations, but that it embraces the Trump proposal, it embraces Egypt's proposal, it embraces the previous proposals by the moderators. So it is agreeing to these key two fundamental points about giving up power, handing over all hostages, living and dead, and says it will enter into good faith negotiations for all of the remaining details.
And Richard, talk about the significance of the United States Arab allies in this moment, in this development. It's my understanding that they have played a critical role and have been in touch not only with the United States, Hamas, but also Israel and frankly, everyone who has had a stake in this.
I don't think this would have gotten over the line without the help of the Arab mediators. Qatar, in particular, has been speaking with Hamas directly around the clock for the last 2 years, but specifically over the last several days, to pressure Hamas to accept an agreement in order to stop the bloodshed. Qatar and Egypt and other interested parties came out, openly endorsed this plan, and that made it very difficult for Hamas to reject it. Once Pakistan, Indonesia, Jordan, Qatar, Egypt, and others said that they back this plan, Hamas would have been isolated if it had said no. Hamas would have been isolated, perhaps, from the people of Gaza, who are under military pressure, who are under attack at this very moment. Many Gazans want the war to stop at all costs and are not concerned about Hamas's political concerns or Hamas's political future. They want the war to stop because they simply cannot take any more after 2 years and after, according to local medical officials, 66,000 people have been killed in Gaza, half of them women and children. So yes, there are still details to be worked out. Hamas says that all the decisions about the future of the Palestinian people and the future of Gaza are not up to Hamas. They are up to the people of Gaza and all of the political factions there. But the key demands that Hamas leave power and hand over the hostages appear at this stage to have been agreed to by Hamas. Kristen.
Richard Engel, thank you so much for your reporting from Jerusalem. We really appreciate it. Let me head to Ambassador Dennis Ross now and get his reaction to these extraordinary developments. Ambassador Ross, let me read you something that our Andrea Mitchell, a piece of reporting that she is getting, a senior administration official saying, while it looks positive, they are looking into it to understand the details. And this really underscores, I think, a point that Richard was making. There are certainly certainly some significant guarantees in the statement released by Hamas that it will release the hostages, living and dead, that it will effectively lay down its arms. But there's still a lot that needs to be worked out here. Where are we on the road to peace?
Well, I think we need to look at this as for what I thought it was always going to be, a yes, but. What is very smart about this is that Hamas has, and no doubt with the assistance, I think, of maybe the Qataris, has picked up on what they believe was probably the most important thing to President Trump, but I would probably also say to the Israeli public, and that's the release of hostages, because they're not conditioning the release of all the hostages, alive and dead. They're saying they agree to the terms that are in the Trump plan, pending the conditions on the ground. That's another way of saying pending the ceasefire and so forth. So that's very smart. The notion that they're prepared to leave power in the sense that others will be responsible for administering Gaza, maybe that's symbolic. It's symbolic, but I think it also needs it. It doesn't address what has always been an Israeli concern, and to be fair, I think something else that it probably also does something that's interesting. It does something that is deals with the idea of administration, but it doesn't deal with who's control behind the scenes. Mm-hmm. In Lebanon, you had the equivalent of Hezbollah never being in a position where they were formally in the government, but they controlled the government from outside. So when Hamas signs up to the idea of we won't be in the administration, but they're not dealing with the question of disarmament, they're leaving open the possibility that they could still have control indirectly. So you're likely to see the Israelis looking at that and saying, that's not part of what we signed up to.
Well, Ambassador Ross, you take me to my next question, because you and I have spent a lot of time talking about what happens to Gaza on the day after. And I was speaking with a senior Israeli official a week ago at the United Nations who was very clear. Israel sees a significant role for itself if and when the fighting does come to an end. Talk about how you see that piece of this unfolding based on what we're learning here.
Look, I think the key thing all along has been, how do you ensure that when this is over, the hostages are released, Hamas is no longer in control directly or indirectly, and that you have reconstruction, but reconstruction can only take place if there is demilitarization. No one, including the Saudis and the Emiratis, are going to invest in Gaza and its reconstruction if Hamas retains arms or can reconstitute itself. That's number one. Number two, the Israelis would want to say that they will retain control over the security of Gaza, but according to the Trump plan, they will not. They are committing to full withdrawal from Gaza, but they're committing to full withdrawal with the retention of a security buffer until such time as they can say that there is no longer any threat of terror. That's something that will have to clearly be negotiated. Yeah. The whole point here is much has to be negotiated, even in the best case where both sides say yes without qualification.
All right. All right. Ambassador Dennis Ross, thank you so much for your insights. We really appreciate it. And we do have some more breaking news to tell you about right now. Very different topic. This on the sentencing and I believe we are going to this very different topic right now, on the sentencing of Sean Diddy Combs. Combs is back in court to find out how much time he will spend behind bars. I want to get right to NBC's Laura Jarrett to lead over and take over our breaking news coverage as the judge reads the sentence.
We thank you for watching, and remember, stay updated on breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or watch live on our YouTube channel.